Hello everybody, welcome back to Your Stable Friend. We have a brand new stable friend to introduce you to.
Hi there, I'm Naomi.
Naomi, how long have you been part of the mentorship program?
I've been here for about 2.5 years.
And you rode, tell us a little about your history.
So I grew up riding in Virginia. I was on a horse by the time I was 4 years old. I almost always belonged to a stable. I competed in the horse shows. I was really passionate about equestrianism. And then I left the equestrian world when I was in my late teens. And then during that time, I had my whole journey into animal activism, and I became really passionate about it, and I started viewing equestrianism in a whole different light. And there were certain things that even when I was engaging in them at that time, growing up, doing those activities, that I felt wrong about and really didn't like that I was doing. Which was part of the reason I left.
Let's stop you there for a moment, just so we don't get so far ahead of ourselves and have to backtrack. What were some of those things that you felt a conflict about doing?
Well, one of the things I love so much about this barn is the bitless stuff. And I just remember any time I would go to put the bit in the horse's mouth, and there would be a struggle, and the horse was clearly not wanting to do it, and we're putting it in the mouth, and I'm like, God, that must be so uncomfortable for them. And I would have these kind of feelings of repulsion. And the crops, too. It was like we had to carry crops. That's what your teachers, they'd put it in your hand. And it was just always so completely normalized that you would disregard your own feelings when you would get that little moral check of, this doesn't feel right, or I don't think this horse is enjoying that. It was like those activities that are so normalized, you're taught to completely disregard your feelings because everybody's doing it, and that's the way you have to do it according to them.
Do you remember the first time, I think you started riding when you were 4. Yep. Do you remember the first time that you had to use a crop?
It was, honestly, when I rode as a young person back in Virginia, I don't ever remember not having one.
So it was so accepted and so normalized for even a 4-year-old who was obviously coming to riding probably because you loved horses.
Because I genuinely loved horses.
It wasn't like your parents' idea, like, oh, we're going to put you in gymnastics, we're going to put you in riding, we're going to put you in softball.
No, yeah. From the moment I saw a horse being ridden the first time, I was like, I want to do that. Let me do that.
Okay. So I thought about for myself too, I couldn't remember the first time that I used a crop either because I keep thinking that it would have been traumatic for me. But obviously it wasn't because I have no memory of it. And I remember feeling very proud, I think I mentioned this in another video, feeling very proud when my very good girlfriend gave me a beautiful riding crop for my birthday. That I remember. It was cream color shaft with a brown handle and a brown little thing, and the brand, it was called the EG Whip. That I remember. I don't remember the first time having to use it and feeling any sort of a pain in my soul, which I believe I would have because I loved the horses so much. It wasn't about the riding. It was great that you could maybe ride them too, but I loved them so much.
Yeah, and I even, thinking back, I remember seeing, I was watching when I was a kid, I don't remember exactly what it was. It was some movie or something where a horse was being hit with a crop or a whip, and I felt so upset by it, and I was like, oh my God, that's horrible. What a villain. Never even making the connection that I was doing that anytime I went to the barn, anytime I had a lesson or performed in a show.
Isn't that fascinating?
Mm-hmm.
And I see that so much on social media where people separate abuse where someone has to be literally beating a horse within an inch of its life for them to consider it to be abusive, rather than a lot of the daily punishing that many trainers or equestrians do, that a layman would look at it and go, whoa, that they're beating that horse. You're like,
yeah.
No, this is just a little punishment. This is just a correction. I'm just correcting him. Okay, so all good points. Now, leaving riding as a late teenager and then coming back into it as a young adult, what were your feelings? You knew now what would be expected of you. You knew that you would probably maybe have to wear spurs. You might have to carry a crop. You would certainly have to probably have a bit. What were those feelings like, God, but I really want to ride? Or was it like, I really want to find a place just to be with horses? Like, what was the whole idea behind you getting back into riding?
It was a conversation. Well, I'd always wanted to get back into riding because I missed the communion with horses so much. But it was a conversation that I had with my partner where I was like, yeah, I've wanted to get back into riding for such a long time, but I just don't feel comfortable with it, with my ideas about how animals should be treated and the way that they're mistreated and taught as they're framed as objects and just things for us to use. And my partner was like, well, you should come to the barn that I work at because it's not like that at all and it's completely different. You'll just have to come and see for yourself. And so that's what I did when I came here.
So I just want to show off for a second and say that Naomi is riding not only bitless, but mostly only riding bareback. The horse that she's riding is barefoot. That's incidental, but I like to say those three things together. And is hoping to go completely bridleless at some point and be completely tackless at ridden liberty. That's basically your goal.
Yeah.
So that is something that you can live with. You can live with that.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, and it's like if they're comfortable, then I'm comfortable.
What are some of the telltale signs for you that would make it so you would say, no, I can't.
I feel like anything that forces an animal to go against its natural instincts is animal abuse and animal cruelty, and that is an automatic no for me.
Okay, so for instance, Bella, who you ride, who's right behind us right now, Bella doesn't love being tacked up. So you've actually gotten rid of one of those problems.
Yeah, for
no
one,
tack.
We use less tack, and then we also have like constant rewards going while she is going through that process. And so if she's acting like she doesn't like what's going on, we can easily just be like, here's a reward for doing a good job and standing still for us. And that makes her extremely easy to tack up. And it's like all she needs is a little positive encouragement. And
speak of the devil. Here she is. Some people might say, well, if she doesn't like being tacked up and she doesn't like to have her tack put on, she's telling you she doesn't want to ride. But when you get on her, do you ever feel like that she doesn't enjoy herself?
No, I think she even gets upset when she sees other horses going out for her like riding slots. She's like, wait, that's my lesson. Why are you tacking up that horse?
I do believe that there are many horses that don't enjoy being ridden. And I do believe that's because either something is hurting them or bothering them, or they had a very bad start and they have a bad association with riding. But I have actually met horses, because people think because I'm not riding at this point in my journey anymore, I rode for 40 years, so I can have a little break. They think that since I'm not riding, I'm against riding. I'm not against riding. I teach riding every day. But I do believe that some horses do not like it, but on that same note, I do believe some horses do actually enjoy it.
Yeah, and just like a person would have a preference and not everybody likes the same activity, horses are going to be the exact same way. They have fully functioning brains as well, so some of them might be absolutely fine with being ridden, some of them might enjoy it, and then some of them might not want to do it, and if that's the case, you should never force them to do it. And I think it's such a weird mentality people have where they can really easily understand that it's wrong, that you shouldn't force a person into doing something that they don't want to do. But when it comes to animals, people seem to think it's really weird to say, oh no, you shouldn't force an animal to do what it doesn't want to do.
I'm so glad you brought that up, because that was actually the main thing I wanted to address. Why do you think that people think it's okay not to treat horses like we treat other humans, but even more so, because some people have a really hard time with that, like other animals? Why do other animals get a pass for certain things, and horses that have been literally are the most generous, most giving, most helpful to humankind, why do they still have such a really hard life? such a hard rope to toe in this life.
The word for that is used in the animal activism community is speciesism, and it's basically just you hold humans to you view humans in a much different way than animals. And like what we would demand in terms of treatment toward another human, we don't think we need to apply to animals morally. When there's no good reason to feel that way, because they can experience the same amount of suffering physically, mentally, and emotionally that humans can. But yeah, I think it's just, humans
Okay,
have
so
this...
that I can understand where people come from. That I don't feel that way, but I understand that. But what about when they categorize other animals? Like, oh my God, I would never use a crop on my bunny, but it's absolutely okay for me to smack my horse a bunch of times because he stopped at a jump.
I think it has to do with horses historically being such a profit-driven industry. Humans have dogs and cats because they're companion animals and they think of them in terms of that. So they might have a more natural inclination to treat them better. But horses have always been used, they are not tools, they are living beings, but they have been viewed and used very unfairly as tools throughout history to, make money essentially.
Isn't it just so sad though? Because when you think about them and what they've done for humankind, the progress they helped us achieve, from the doctor in the middle of the night on Little House on the Prairie hooking up his horse to go save somebody, to the Pony Express delivering important documents. The horse has done so much for us, and in return, we do so little for the horse.
Yeah, and then God forbid someone even suggest treating them in a fair and respectful way, and then you're just looked at as kind of crazy.
Yes, why is it, my husband asks that all the time. He says, wait a second, you're the one everyone's jumping down your throat? Not that guy who was beating the little pony? Everyone's jumping down your throat for standing up for the pony? I'm like, yeah, that's what happens.
I think it's due to their own guilt. And that's what is upsetting them. When you say, hey, you shouldn't treat an animal that way, they have feelings. Imagine the suffering you're putting them through. You have now awakened something in them. They probably have this intrinsic guilt they're not even aware of. So of course they're gonna react that way, very defensively. But if they genuinely thought there was nothing wrong with it, they wouldn't be getting defensive in the first place.
Very good point. And I have to say that guilt is a very stringent taskmaster. People can can react very, very harshly and can be very, very defensive when they start to feel feelings of guilt.
Yeah.
I've experienced that in many different aspects of my life. When someone feels guilty, how it gets turned around on you. Anything but to feel guilty. People really don't like to feel guilty.
Yeah, they'll justify any treatment of an animal or a person even if it can validate or vindicate them in some way.
I was thinking for myself, why am I okay with feeling guilty and feeling remorseful? I believe that the reason that I'm okay with it is because I've made a commitment to change. If I didn't want to change, I probably would be defending myself right and left. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes complete sense.
Yeah.
And I think that that's true of everybody. Anybody that is okay with the place that they've arrived at aren't going to be hyper defensive about their past mistakes or the practices that they're currently using.
I'm very happy to talk about my past mistakes because I hope that other people, if I share mine, maybe I can save somebody else from the pain, the hurt, the guilt, the remorse, especially a new generation, coming up. So this was a very good talk. I loved it. What do you think we should call this one? We touched on so many different things.
That's a good question. This is,
I guess this is
animal ethics.
This is an introduction to our new stable friend into Naomi. And it's going to be very interesting to get another point of view of someone who comes from a background where they did all of the things that they no longer can stomach, basically. Mm-hmm. And it's going to be very different from our former stable friend who didn't have any knowledge of the horse world, which was fascinating because it was like talking to the layman. But this is going to be very exciting. Naomi, thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you for being our stable friend.
Thank you for having me.